Major news in the search for missing Michigan mother Lynette Hooker. The 55-year-old went missing without a trace in the Bahamas after sailing there with her husband. They went to a restaurant and then were returning back to their sailboat on a dinghy. He says the weather was poor, that she lost her balance somehow and fell overboard. He then reported her missing several hours later. Well, he was detained in the Bahamas by police. He was questioned for several hours, but at the end of all of that, he was released. Here's an image from all of that. The media from around the country, probably around the globe, asking him questions as he left the jail there in the Bahamas. And then when he sat down with reporters, he did a few interviews. He said that he vows to stay there in the Bahamas and search for his missing wife, that he can't think of doing anything else. But now at this hour, we're learning that Brian Hooker has left the Bahamas. I have a very special guest to break down his interviews. What stands out to her is surprising. You're going to want to watch till the end because she is a domestic violence expert. She's a former prosecutor and also a former defense attorney. But before that, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being here. And please hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Now, the case of missing mother from Michigan, Lynette Hooker. Joining us in the conversation, we have Marie Pereira, former criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, domestic violence expert, registered nurse, and a friend of the program, my friend. Thank you for being here to talk about this.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and you know, it's such a sad and tragic story that continues to unfold there in the Bahamas. We still don't have Lynette. She's still considered missing. Her husband, Brian Hooker, was detained for several days and not officially charged in the case. And he did several interviews, Marie, I know that you're aware, when he got out. And we're going to dive through what he's saying in these interviews. And he said that he was going to go out there and search for his wife, but that hasn't been the case because now I'm hearing that he left the Bahamas. So what's your initial thoughts in all of this before we look at some of his interviews?
You know, my initial thought is that he did it. I don't know anything about their relationship, but I'm an overly suspicious person when it comes to matters of men and women. Primarily because of my background as a prosecutor, we need to look more into this to see if there's a motive behind it, their acrimony, etc.
Yeah, and let's watch one of the news reports. This is NBC, and I'll get your thoughts.
It's been 10 days. Been a long time. I don't think I've ever been apart from her in 25 years. For this long, she wouldn't stop, and I'm not going to stop.
I want people to know that Lynette is my life, and we've been together almost half my life, and we belong to each other, and I mean to keep looking.
Did police ever explicitly ask you if you hurt your wife?
Of course.
What did you say to them?
I said I've never harmed Lynette, and I never would harm Lynette, and I want to find Lynette.
Okay, that's very specific language. Let's just start with the fact that we belong to each other.
Sounds a little possessive to me. In 2026, who belongs to who? He could have said we're committed to each other. Nobody belongs to anybody. And the crying, I'm not at all influenced by that because we know, Matt, they be outside crying and saying, let me help you. Look, bring her back, please bring her back. And they did it. So that's not impacting me at all. I just think that the fact that he left the Bahamas, is he still in the Bahamas?
He left the Bahamas, and here he was telling reporters that the only thing he wanted to do was search for his wife.
I see. But credible sources are saying that he left the Bahamas. And I'm using the word left kindly because we could say he fled the Bahamas, because they weren't finished with their investigation. And I'm surprised that they didn't use their spidey detective senses to take his passport. How is this man allowed to travel from the jurisdiction before they completely cleared his involvement or non-involvement in this accident? And I'll put that in quotes.
You know, you're a domestic violence expert. The daughter who I've interviewed has expressed, she says that she's witnessed domestic violence in her mother's relationship with her stepfather.
Okay.
There are other family members that have come forward and said they've seen bruises on this missing woman's body prior.
I felt like there was more to the story of her just falling overboard.
Yeah, what they ask you about the relationship and what came to mind? What did you share with them?
I shared their past history of domestic violence and child abuse from Brian.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, number one, but I've also seen some reports about that. So what has your grandma and your mom's friends, and what have you witnessed in their relationship? Because they've been together for how long?
Over about 25 years.
So what can you share about that, about these allegations of domestic violence?
I did witness him choking out his daughter when I was in 3rd grade. I was a witness in court for that. I did witness him choke out my mom and throw her out of my room one night when they were heavily drinking. And then she called the cops, and then she's the one that went to jail because there was blood on Brian's face, I guess. So they took her away instead. And then I know 2 years ago they broke up. He threatened to kill her and was choking her out and to throw her overboard. So the fact that this is happening 2 years later is a little suspicious.
And I know that my friend Ashley Banfield has been reporting on the case quite a bit too. And I know that she talked to your grandma and also had those pictures of what appeared to be bruises.
Yeah, she had pictures of my mom with bruises on her back after a fight. My mom never told me about that, and I didn't know those pictures existed until recently. So my mom tried to keep that stuff away from me. She'd try not to show relationship problems unless they were actually going to break up. Then she told me, but fights and all that, she didn't really include me in that.
That must be really hard to think about and to see right now, especially in this moment where your mom's missing and you feel helpless.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm sorry about that too. But I think that it's important that you're sharing this information with the authorities so that they can, better ask him questions, because he was in questioning, according to reporting there. His attorney said that he was in questioning for about 3 hours on Friday. And then he was in questioning again today on Monday for about an hour.
Yeah, I was told by my grandma that the Coast Guard asked questions and he wouldn't answer. So that's all I know about that.
What questions do you have for him?
How drunk were you guys that night? Were you guys fighting? Why was it so bad that you felt the need to do this? If that did happen, why didn't you just leave and have a divorce? What? So many people care about her, and it's just, how could you do that to us? Your family.
So your response to, not only that he was saying we belong to each other, but then at the end of it, he was making comments that he would never hurt his wife. He made it very clear. He made a point to say that.
Of course, because he's trying to remove suspicion from himself. So he wants to look like the grieving and concerned husband. But I've seen this screenplay before, and I know the outcome. Just because he's here crying doesn't mean he's not involved with her murder. It doesn't mean that in between all those cute pictures on that boat that they didn't get into an argument. And now that you're revealing that there is a prior pattern of physical domestic violence between them, him against her, to be exact, it doesn't mean that it was just like the circle of violence going around, the love bombing stopped, and then the violence started again. Photographs between couples getting married, giving people gifts and this and that, it means nothing. It could still be a way of control and manipulation. And they had an argument. Maybe she said, when we get back home, I'm leaving. I'm done with. And then he was like, bada bing, bada boom.
We have another clip to go over. And this one, I'm going to also play what the reporter says at the beginning before he gets into the interview with Brian Hooker, because it's very interesting to see how Brian Hooker was also controlling how the interview was going to happen in the first place. So let me put that on our screen.
We had agreed to an interview at some point today. And then we got a phone call early this morning that said the interview has to happen at this very moment because Brian Hooker is going to leave the area where we are in right now. And so within very short notice, we quickly were able to get something set up. We spoke to him, but we only spoke to him for about 6 minutes before his attorney said that he couldn't get into certain aspects of the investigation. Here is some of the interview, and we'll talk about it on the other end.
My goal is to go back and speak with the Hopetown Fire and Rescue volunteers, the search and rescue volunteers. They have been, I believe, still looking whenever they can, but even while I have been detained by the Royal Bahamian Police Department. I was speaking with a volunteer the day that I was detained to go out on one of their boats. They were going to take off work and take me searching some more areas. I won't be able to stop looking.
You want to keep looking for Lynette?
I'm going to need somebody with more authority to tell me to stop.
Yeah, okay.
You explain to me, you've seen the attention this case has had.
And more like I've heard about it. I have not looked at the news or any social media since the day before the accident, because my sister flew in to support me and said it's getting terrible out there. And then I went to dinner one night after searching, and I was approached by a freelance reporter, and I began to think that it was going to be terrible.
Okay. Lot to break down right there as well. But again, when I'm hearing that he needs things a certain kind of way at a certain time before he leaves this area, then you're only able to ask these questions, but yet I want to be transparent. What's your thoughts?
I think they engineered the interview in an effort to do some risk management and clean up his image. But then when they realized that the reporter was asking a lot more questions, they sort of pulled back and retracted and started thinking, well, maybe this wasn't such a good idea. They wanted him to look like the grieving husband. They wanted him to look like the concerned husband. And they wanted to throw away any ideas that he might have been involved in this accident. I almost said murder, but in this accident, because there is a presumption of innocence until, he's proven guilty. But where there's smoke, there's fire. If this was a relationship that didn't have any domestic violence at all, but you have people who she cried out to, who are aware of the problems in their relationships, who verified that in the past he's put hands on his wife. That makes a big difference. And now my suspicion is justified. See, I was thinking, all right, Marie, calm down, put your legal analyst hat on and be neutral. But now that I'm hearing that her children, his stepchildren, are saying they had fights before, there were domestic violence issues before, and she was a victim of violence at his hands. Why would it be crazy to think that he took her all the way out in the middle of the ocean, staged an accident, and then she's gone? I mean, if he had to do it, I have to say it would be brilliant, because if he did this in America, there would be, I think, a lot more resources to investigate, and he probably wouldn't be walking free now, because they would have at least kept his passport. What is going on over there that they would just allow him to be free? And what was he doing having dinner? The wife is missing. You should be in your room crying. Keep the energy. What are you doing outside trying to be all sexy and eating? How much grief is that?
You know, it's funny that you picked up on that because I picked up on that too. And I was just thinking, I probably, like, people probably would have had to remind me to eat. And I've been at a lot of missing persons searches, and I've been boots on the ground witnessing families of abducted people and different nature. And people go up to them with food. They're like, "You haven't eaten today." And they're like, oh, you know, like they're bewildered, like they, you know, like they're not even thinking about it. And he went to a restaurant, which struck me as odd.
Not a good look, terrible optics. Based on the totality of the circumstances so far, he is not looking like the grieving husband.
Let me play another clip for us. I'm going to put this on our screen.
As you can imagine, things are chaos and hectic, and I just don't want to take a chance that anything could interfere with the search, as it already kind of has. You know, I understand the Bahamian police need to do their investigation. I welcome any attention, anything that helps me further my goal of finding Lynette.
Your attorney had told us that the line of questioning from police when you were in custody was leaning toward you having possibly caused harm to her. Did police ever explicitly ask you if you hurt your wife?
Of course.
What did you say to them?
I said I've never harmed Lynette, and I never would harm Lynette, and I want to find Lynette.
You're going to continue searching on your boat. You're going to try to hire
a
plane.
Hire boats, and I'm going to try to hire a plane. Funds are always limited, but I don't need money without Lynette. We quit working this thing together. We had a plan, so I got to work the plan. And there's no point in being in any of it. I don't even.
You let me know when you're good.
It's been 10 days. It's been a long time. I don't think I've ever been apart from her in 25 years. For this long. I don't like it. She wouldn't stop, and I'm not going to.
Okay, before we get into whether or not he stops, you are both former prosecutor, former defense attorney. So walk me through how you view his answers through each lens. So start with former prosecutor and what he said, what stood out to you.
What stands out to me is that he's making it seem like they had this beautiful marriage where they belonged to each other. It sounded a little bit possessive when he said, I basically own her and she owns me. And he said, I've never harmed her. So to me, immediately, that's a lie. People who know them said in the past, he has effectuated domestic violence against her. So he has harmed her. But if you're asking me to put my defense attorney at the presumption of innocence, just because he has a history of arguing with his wife, and there might have been some mutual intimate partner abuse. We don't know who initiated it, who was the aggressor. So let's calm down. There needs to be an investigation.
So, you know, Brian Hooker says in all of these interviews, when he's released from jail, from custody, that he wants nothing more than to expend all of his resources and search by land and by air and search for his wife. Lo and behold, there is reporting, and this from the New York Post, that he's leaving the Bahamas.
You know what? He was free to go. He wasn't detained. He was represented by an attorney. And if they said to his attorney, your client needs to hang around until we finish an investigation, and they didn't want him to leave, they would have taken his passport. So the headline and I'm putting my criminal defense attorney, objective legal analyst hat on, and I'm trying to stop hating on him. Nobody said he couldn't leave. So the headline says flees because we're talking about New York Post. So they said he fled. He just took a passport that he owned. They didn't take it from him, and he got on the plane and he left because he felt like they were trying to put him on the hook for what happened. So until they told him he couldn't leave, which they probably did not, because his attorney would have said, you can't leave. And they would have said, give us his passport, right? So he voluntarily, willingly left, which was his right to do because nobody told him that he couldn't. So, you can't go according to the headlines. The man was free to leave. He's back in America. He needs support from his family. Maybe he's coming back to get resources to go back to further investigate and try to recover her body to give her a proper burial. Maybe she, was swept up water and maybe they could discover her body somewhere. It doesn't mean the fact that he left has a nefarious reason and it should be considered any type of consciousness of guilt, because he left because he had the right to, and he's presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, which we're far from that.
It's a very fast moving story, a lot of developments. And I really appreciate your insight, both, from the defense and the prosecution point of view. Thank you for debating yourself on it.
Listen, you know me. We've been on together, and one of the reasons why I love being on with you is because you allow a person to just be themselves. You're not like, a stuffy interviewer guy. You let me be me. You ask all the right questions, and you receive my answers. You don't judge that I don't follow a script, and I speak from my heart.
You definitely don't follow a script.
No, I do not.
And I love you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining the conversation, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
Again, anyone with any information, please call the authorities there in the Bahamas. I'll also keep you posted. That's the very latest for this episode. Please take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.